TFL EV is brought to you by Flow Charger, maker of reliable, high-quality charging stations for your electric vehicle.
All right, Paul here for TFL Car, and we've got something kind of fun, different, and pretty exciting to drive around the track today. It's the brand new AMG EQS. Now, this thing is all electric. It's got a very big 108 kilowatt hour battery thereabouts. It is a very big car. It's the replacement, in a way, the electric replacement for the S-Class. So this is a really large four-door sedan. And today we're going to try out and see if it's really an AMG product by taking it around the track, doing 0 to 60 stuff with it. And let's see if it earns that badge. Okay, under the hood, hold on a second. Notes on the hood. Only the specialist personnel of a qualified specialist workshop, it's a lot of specialists, should open the hood. Access by the customer is not permitted. So what is under the hood? Well, it's under the hood is going to be a bunch of very orange, thick cables and control boxes, but basically this thing has two different electric motors in it, one for the front, one for the rear. It's a 4MATIC Plus car. The cool thing about this car, you can get up to, there's a 4MATIC EQS, then we get to the AMG, and it's 516 horsepower for the EQS, and then the AMG version goes up to 649, and then if you go to race start, it goes for 751, and the torque goes up also. These are not the same electric motors. Well, they're based on the same motors, but they're AMG hot-rodded electric motors. They went in and changed the windings. They even changed the cooling system. They've got something called a water knife to help cool it. They put in a different radiator for the cooling of the motors and the entire powertrain, because, you know, electric motors build a lot of heat when they're driving you down the road, or even in regen mode creates heat. And also the battery packs get hot. The higher the amperage discharge rate, the hotter your packs get. And all these things are what makes you have to slow down in your electric car, like after 1 or 2 0 to 60 runs. Well, this car, we've been running it, and we will run it on the track here. It's designed for continuous use because of this extra work that AMG has put into this powertrain, not only increasing the horsepower and the torque, but also increasing the cooling capacity of both the battery pack and those electric motors. So we have an AMG product, as it should be, that can be driven continuously around a racetrack. So while we can't look under the hood, well, we kind of now know what's there, at least in the powertrain. All right, here we go in the AMG EQS with race start. So we're gonna do a 0 to 60 run and see what this thing does. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It doesn't launch like crazy hard. It's pretty hard though. So yeah, it gets off the line and then just ramps it in. And basically banging off runs right about 3.9 seconds to 60. Now it's rated at 3.4, so that's kind of interesting, right? That it's not doing its actual rated time, because normally here at, you know, over a mile above sea level with a internal combustion engine car, we would give you the disclaimer now that of course the 0 to 60 time is slower, but that's not a problem for an electric vehicle. So yeah, it's interesting that the time is a little bit slower than advertised. I think it's supposed to do 3.4 seconds to 60 miles an hour. Now we do all our driving out here at IMI, which is a fantastic track. Not only the course that we do our lapping on, but also you can come out here and run dirt bikes and quads and do just about anything you want on all these off-road courses they have here. So come out to IMI if you want to have fun on something with either 2 or 4 wheels. All right, brakes, tires, wheels, suspension. What are we dealing with here? Well, we've got 22-inch rims with lots and lots of spokes, as is traditional with an EV vehicle. You're not allowed to see through the wheels on EVs for some reason. It's aerodynamics, we all know that. But anyway, we've got 22-inch wheels. It's a 275/35. It is a Michelin Pilot Sport EV. So the EV is basically for load rating, right? So this thing can have it's a very heavy vehicle at 3 tons of weight. So your normal Pilot Sport wouldn't be up to it. And plus also they do different constructions because of all the torque these vehicles have. Plus they do different compounding for the extra weight so that there's decent longevity. So typically harder compounds, trickier compounds, more silica, things like that in the compound, stiffer constructions. So it is a pilot sport, but this EV pilot sport is specific to an electric vehicle. And then the brakes. Now this part's actually kind of cool because it's not typical. Typically we find EV vehicles are under-braked. They rely on a lot of regenerative braking, so you get them out on the track and you tend to go through brakes really quickly. This actually, because it's an AMG product, has these 17-inch monster, not that we can see them, but they're there, carbon ceramic brakes. So big, huge brakes on this vehicle. And again, at its weight and its performance level, it needs them. And then suspension-wise, what do we have? Well, we've got full air suspension, and all of it is, again, tweaked from the regular EQS for AMG. So we've got the Sport and the Sport Plus modes, an individual mode as well, where we're actually controlling, of course, not only ride height, but also roll control, pitch control, all of that. Again, when you're getting into a vehicle that weighs what this thing weighs, body control becomes very, very difficult and therefore very, very important, especially if you're going to put an AMG badge on it. So complete air suspension on this thing, all of it designed for going anywhere from comfort to being out here on the track. Let's try another run in the AMG EQS. Race start mode engaged. It's an extra 100 horsepower. Oh, there you go, 3.63 seconds to 60 miles an hour. So that's pretty close. 3.4 is what it's rated at. Again, you can't make excuses for altitude with an electric vehicle, so 3.63 seconds to 60 miles an hour. Certainly not slow. Well, when you talk about style on a vehicle like this, again, especially with electric vehicles, they're so concerned with aerodynamics. As a matter of fact, the drag coefficient is 0.23, which is incredibly slippery. We end up maybe talking about it looking like a very aggressive egg, especially when it's in the white color that it is here. But it's a pretty cool looking car. Again, you got those huge wheels on there, wheels and tires, and all of that gives it a great stance. And you do have a bit of a splitter and some aerodynamic things going on with a spoiler in the back and a bit of a diffuser. It's got all the room in the world in it, and is really designed to be something that looks great pulling up to a curb and is super efficient also slipping through the air at highway speeds. And man, let's talk about this interior for a second, because holy cow, is there a lot going on. Steering wheel's got all sorts of features on it. The top left here is for the main display. Top right is over here for the huge screen, the central screen here. We also have the adaptive cruise control settings with distance and all of that there. And then bottom right, you've got your phone and your normal settings for the stereo, so turning volume up and down. And then down here, we've got our AMG buttons that we're used to seeing, where here you can actually go through the different drive modes of the car, go to different settings for stability, traction control, and AMG dynamics. So all that can be set on the steering wheel, and it also, of course, is being mirrored over here on the main screen too. So you can kind of see everything pop up here and run through it this way as well. In this area, this is all kind of this push-to-click touch-sensitive area. And this is actually a fingerprint reader, so you can use that for your car for identification. And then you have various settings here for charging, for the park distance. If those beepers were going off, as sometimes they do when you're parked close to something, you can just shut it down. Mute for the stereo, power for the entire entertainment system, all there, and the AMG button I mentioned, as well as your, of course, four-way flashers. And all of this in this haptic feedback kind of thing, where the whole thing sort of bends down and as you click it. We've got the huge center screen, and here you've got a kind of a holographic 3D sort of heads-up display, so you can adjust that on the car. It gives you all sorts of information, a bit more than a normal heads-up display does. And then look at the size of this screen, and you can choose your map orientation, which is normal, of course. You can see where we're sitting on the racetrack right now, and it's giving you real-time sort of mapping of what's going on out there, and you can see the size of the screen's just massive. It's not using an animation. It's actually using like Google Earth images real time while you're driving. Got all your normal info here, of course your climate settings, and then a whole separate screen on the right-hand side that you can basically use to keep monitoring your charge consumption. For example, we've been using a lot of watts per mile because we've been driving it around the track. You can set different intervals for that, but this is a whole separate screen with its own home button for the passenger. So they can set up and change things right off of their passenger screen. So 3 screens, 56 inches of real estate across the dash. Can it get much bigger? The screens are going to be sticking out onto the side view mirrors. That's my prediction in 2 years' time. This is a big, comfortable 4-door sedan, so it has a very, very spacious back seat. Now, I'm maybe the worst person to use as a judge for this because I'm a whopping 5'7" tall, but very nice back seat, nice and contoured, and plenty of leg room back here, as well as a actual moonroof up there, so you can get some light in the back as well. Pretty common these days, but it's nice to have. Of course, with a coupe styling, you got these very sloping C-pillars on the car, so the trunk doesn't have an amazing amount of depth. Of course, remembering that there's a full battery pack underneath this floor. And it does have a lot of actual depth to it that direction though, so heading towards the back seat. So you can get quite a bit of stuff in this trunk for sure, and it makes it quite a practical vehicle. Again, it's got a big back seat, all the room in the world I think you need for a vehicle as far as a good daily driver. So what does this laundry list of AMG and Mercedes technology end up costing you at the end of the day? It's about $149,500 is the base price on the EQS AMG. This particular car, with quite a few options on it, is $158 and change. Now, one of the other tricks that AMG is using to make this 3-ton car feel agile is it actually has an active rear wheel steering system. Up to 37 miles an hour, it's out of phase, and that means that it steers the opposite direction of the front wheels to tighten your turning radius, and it actually does have a very, very tight turning radius, but it also helps agility in tight corners, think like hairpin corners, and then it goes same phase above 37 miles an hour, turning in the same direction. And I'm used to this system actually driving an AMG GT63, for example, has this system, or the GTR, and it really does work. And it's one of those cool tricks, again, when you've got a big vehicle with a long wheelbase and you will still want it to have agility, rear wheel steering really helps. Also, with the all-wheel drive system, with the front and the rear motors, as you go up from Comfort to Sport, Sport Plus mode, you're actually shifting the torque backwards, so they're relying more on the rear motor, giving you a rear torque bias. So when you add all those things together, as well as a brake-based torque vectoring system within these cars, again, you can kind of get around or mask a lot of the issues of a big, heavy, long wheelbase car just by throwing a ton of technology at it, as AMG has here. Whoa! Nothing like throwing a 6,000-pound car around a go-kart track. Wow, that's a lot of work. Just kind of goes to show you cannot hide the weight of a vehicle, though. You know, they say the center of gravity is so low on these electric cars, like the extra weight doesn't matter. But whenever you try and change its direction, you can feel it. The car tends to, under braking, there's just not that much response. There's not that much braking power, and you turn the wheel. It's hesitant to turn. When it does turn, then it doesn't want to straighten out. You just feel all that mass and momentum
whenever you're trying to hustle the thing quickly. Okay, there we go. It's a 103.77, which is actually, again, this is an S-Class in effect. It's a big car. That's a raging fast lap time for a car of its size. It's got a massive back seat. It's got a huge trunk. It's got a big nearly 108 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is a huge pack. That all adds up to a 6,000 pound vehicle, minus like 3 pounds. It's just under 6,000 pounds. So to do a 103.77, it's pretty impressive.
Well, that was pretty exciting, and I think it was a really great sort of test of what it means to take a very high performance sedan and turn it into a very high-performance electric sedan. And so there's pluses and minuses to it. Of course, this thing, when you put it in race start, has an extra 100 horsepower, over the regular, mode that this car is in, which is another 100 or so horsepower over the normal non-AMG version. So we're really getting up there. That part's really exciting. What isn't is the reality of electric cars generally, and that is they're really heavy. So this thing weighs 6,000 pounds, a few pounds less, but 5996 or something like that. So it's a 3-ton car, and I know they say the battery's really low, so that lowers the center of gravity, and so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is weight, and yeah, it's placed as optimally as it can be placed, but it is still twice as heavy as a good sedan would be, and well over 1,000 pounds more of what the equivalent large sedan would be. And so there's no getting around that. So when you're looking at the dynamics of the car, even with all the cleverness of the all-wheel steering, this very trick all-wheel drive system that it has, the torque vectoring that's being done, the big, huge carbon ceramic brakes. Again, AMG did its homework. It put in all the bits and pieces which are missing from so many electric vehicles, but you just can't overcome or hide or make that weight vanish. And so to me, that's the overriding thing with a car like this. Is it's really fun to drive. It's a great road car. It's spectacular in a lot of situations, but when it comes to trying to wring a lap time out of it, while the lap time is quite good, it doesn't have the feel or the fun to drive. It's a much more detached car where you're just managing mass relative to, say, something like AMG's GT63, which can actually be thrown around a track pretty handily, and it's about the same size as this. So I guess that's the conclusion after all is said and done, is weight matters. And while these cars offer spectacular performance on paper, they're a bit of a handful to drive around a track. So it's up to you, which is more important, getting back and forth full electric all the time. To me, I would consider something like the brand new C63 that's coming out, where that has a 472 horsepower, turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, actually just crazy numbers from a 2-liter, and then it has a plug-in hybrid capability, so you can drive it electric, you can still take it on trips, you can do all those things, and it's much lighter relatively than this car is. So these are all the different options we have these days. You figure it out for yourself. There's a lot to choose from, definitely the golden age of motoring. So this is Paul from TFL Car. Come back and see us for more news, reviews, and occasionally Stig's driving cars around racetracks. Well, at least ex-Stig's.